Well, hello everyone. Welcome back from that excellent documentary that you just watched. I am Bedatri Choudhury. I am one of the programmers at Doc NYC, and I'm so glad that this film is a part of Doc NYC Spring Showcase. We have the film team here, these amazing women, and I'm first of all, thank you so much for sharing this film with us, for sharing this film with the world. I have with me Davina Pardo, director producer, Leah Wolchok, director producer, and Sara Bernstein, producer. Hi, guys, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you
Thanks for having us.
Yep. So let me go back to the beginning. I love listening to how a film originated. So who called who? Who had the idea?
There's lots of back and forth. But it started back in 2017, and I was on a long road trip with my kids, who were about 5 and 8 at the time. And we decided to play an audiobook to pass the time. And the audiobook we chose was Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. And what we didn't realize is that Judy narrates that book herself. When we hit play, Judy's beautiful musical voice filled the car. And I think it hit me in really a visceral way that there was a person behind the books. You know, for the first time, I was really wondering about who Judy Blume was. I was a big fan as a kid, but I was really tied up with her characters and the stories, and I never really stopped to think about what Judy Blume's story was. So I think seeing my kids' reaction and hearing that book again and hearing Judy's voice, all those things together made me suddenly just wanting to know everything I could about Judy Blume. And I started just doing some research casually, and then I think sort of my filmmaker curiosity naturally took over. I realized there hadn't yet been a film made about Judy Blume, which I couldn't believe. And after a few months of research and kind of thinking about it, I decided to reach out to Judy. And there was a lot of back and forth before she was ready. She was initially unsure if she wanted to commit to a film. So we emailed back and forth for about a year and a half, and then finally had an in-person meeting which I walked away from thinking, I need Sara. I need to talk to Sara, because Judy we connected and she was interested, but she wasn't saying yes. I think she was still kind of unsure. And I had a feeling that, with Sara and Imagine, we could really help convince her, make the final case that this was the right time and that we were the right people to do it. So that's when I reached out to Sara. And then soon after, Leah was back in Brooklyn for the first time, actually back in the US for the first time in a few years. And we had actually, the three of us worked together previously on a film called Very Semi-Serious.
Yeah.
Talking to Leah, and Leah got involved.
And then we brought it to Amazon, and they saw the incredible potential and loved Judy's story as much as we did and jumped on board.
So how did you win her or talk her into being in this film? Because Davina, you said it was a little difficult in the beginning.
I think she was always tempted. I think that she, one thing she's been saying recently in conversations we've had is that she realized that if it was going to happen, she wanted to be alive for it. She wanted to be part of this film if it was going to eventually get made. And I think she grew to like me and trust me. She knew Imagine. She was really excited about Imagine. She got to a place where she was ready. It was right around the same time she decided to do the Margaret adaptation. So I think she really got to a place where she thought, this is the moment to start doing these projects, so I can be here to see them, be involved with them, and enjoy this process.
Leah, we haven't heard from you yet. What attracted you to the project?
Well, Davina had been talking to me about this from the minute she had that idea. And I've just been listening and supporting her as a friend from very far away, because I was living in Paris at the time for 5 years. And when we moved to Brooklyn for the first time, and she asked me, do you want to make this with me? I was like, Davina, this is going to be an amazing film. I am not sure I'm the right person to do it with you, because unlike most women of our generation, I didn't read Judy's books as a kid. I grew up in a small town in the South in the 80s where Judy's books were seen as taboo. And I think I had internalized a lot of the shame surrounding periods and puberty and women's bodies, and girls' bodies, and didn't want to be a bad girl and read a book I wasn't supposed to read. So I wish I had read Judy's books as a kid. It would have completely changed the way I saw myself, my body, my friends, my family. And so Davina said, listen, there's a couple videos I want you to watch online and just tell me what you think of her. And so I watched Judy's masterclass. And I think maybe like partway through the first episode, I texted Davina and I was like, I love her. And so I got to know Judy first as a person telling her own story in a way, directly to the camera in the same way that we decided to shoot her in the film, before I really got to know her characters and her books and her stories.
So this is a question for all three of you. And Leah, did you read the books for the first time before you went into the film? And for Sara and Davina, did you reread the books before you started working on the film?
Well, the month and year that Judy said yes to the project and that I got involved and Imagine got involved was February of 2020. So we ended up having a long development period because when everything shut down, we couldn't film yet. And so I read almost all of Judy's books within that first spring and summer of 2020, when my kids were logging on to Zoom school and we were all stuck at home. And I was transported back to who I was as a kid, who I wish I had been as a kid. And I was also sharing the books with my kids who were small at the time. And so I was getting to experience the book as an adult, connecting to the characters as an adult, and then through my kids' eyes, what they were experiencing, connecting to her characters as kids.
And what about you both, Sara and Davina? What was it like to read these books as an
I mean, at
adult?
least from my perspective, I was such an avid Judy Blume fan when I was young. Like I was that girl who was reading forever under the covers, like everything I know about, adolescence, puberty, sex, I probably learned from Judy Blume. So for me, what was so remarkable is how much I had retained. I mean, how much those books just came right back to me. So it was really, really fun to reread as an adult and, glean something new from it, but also bring me, I guess the nostalgic factor for me was so strong too. It brought me right back to that, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old girl who consumed all those books, which was really fun.
Yeah, I feel that completely because, it's been a few years since I read the last Judy Blume book. But in the film, when they say, I must, and I just completed that sentence. I said, I know how the rest of it goes. Davina, what about you?
Yeah.
What was it like rediscovering as in a way?
I had a similar experience to Sara on that first reread. You're just taken right back, and it feels like a memory. Like you're back wherever you were sitting reading those books, and the things that you remember so clearly, the things that you've maybe forgotten about that are like so funny or so poignant to re-experience. And then I think there had to be a second read of all the books, thinking about how they fit into the Judy story, how they fit into the film. So there was, in that year where we were, especially those first few months of lockdown, just reading and rereading Judy Blume felt like such a luxury.
And, the world was a certain way when you were making the film, and the world is as it is now with, the same problems coming back around book banning. So, why do you, and like also Judy Blume, fortunately, is having a moment with the narrative film, with the documentary, and like I was reading of a few more works in progress. So how do you think all this fits in? Like, what is her place in the world today?
Who wants to take that?
And anyone can jump in. Yeah.
I will say, I don't think any of us could have predicted what a moment Judy is having today. I mean, Davina, Leah, I think like we were obviously enamored. We knew she was worthy of a film. We knew she hadn't really been explored, or her relationship with her readers, actually, which is, one of the most poignant, I think, aspects of the film, hadn't really been sort of explored. But I don't think any of us could have predicted that we would be in a moment where everything she wrote about back in the 70s, 80s would be so relevant today. And that culturally, the world and certainly our country would turn, back the clock so much that these books are actually almost more necessary today than they were maybe a decade ago.
I think we had been tracking the progression of book banning over the decades since Judy's books were first censored in the 80s. And we knew we wanted to talk to authors who were writing for young audiences whose books were being banned. And those are mostly authors who are Black or brown or queer, whose characters are Black or brown or queer. And those were the people we really wanted to talk to sort of bring us into the present day. But what we didn't realize, as Sara was saying, was how much state governors, state legislators were going to get involved in pushing book banning into the front and center of public discourse. I mean, we thought it was like a relic of the 80s culture wars.
But now there's a true lack of sex education, probably globally, but certainly around the country. That makes, Judy's writing more necessary than ever.
And it's interesting you said that because, she speaks with such candor, which, when we were kids, elders didn't. Our politicians don't. Like everyone we look for guidance and direction, they don't speak like that. And I was growing up in India reading the books. I wasn't really plugged into her interviews. So was it hard to, get that kind of frankness and candor out of her as the protagonist of your film?
I think there are two answers to that. One is, Judy is honest and forthcoming just by nature. The voice of her books is so true to who she is and the way she engages with people. So on one level, I think when she decides to have a connection with someone, she's going to be open. And I think that was part of the hesitancy with doing the film. She knew if she was going to do this film, she was going to kind of lay it all out and be honest with us. And she wanted to make sure that we were the right people to do that with. On the other hand, of course, I like to think that over the course of this relationship, we built up trust, and we built this relationship over a long period of time. That first year, that COVID year, we were really continuing the relationship over Zoom with Judy. So we check in with her every so often on Zoom. So by the time we interviewed her, we had months and months of just conversations, research conversations, reading and rereading, talking to her about her archives, learning about her relationship with her readers. So we had a ton more information at that first interview than we might have had we jumped right into it.
And Leah, going back to what you were talking about, there's Lena Dunham in the film, there's Jackie Woodson, there's like this whole, I would say, spectrum / rainbow. Calling it a rainbow is very relevant to this film. How did you decide on this very wide spectrum and range of people, apart from Judy Blume, who you thought should be a part of the film?
Well, like I said, that we always knew we wanted to have authors who were writing for young people whose books were censored. And we always wanted to talk to creators who were inspired by Judy's honesty and sort of pushing the form forward even more in terms of body positivity, sex positivity. So we immediately thought of Lena Dunham with Girls. She completely revolutionized the way that, female protagonists are seen in a TV series. Anna Konkle, also going back to playing herself as a 7th grader. And I think episode 3 is about masturbation. We knew we had to talk to her because we imagined like she must have been influenced by Judy Blume. So we wanted to talk to creators, writers, and we also wanted to make sure we also talked to contemporary middle schoolers because we wanted to talk to kids about how they were experiencing the books today. In the same way that Davina and I were watching our own kids experience her books, we knew we had to bring that voice into the film. And then of course, like Sara mentioned before, talking to these long-term correspondents, the women who, as girls, reached out to Judy because they had no one else to turn to, because they wanted to share everything about what they were going through and get her advice and support. Those are the women that we really wanted to talk to. So we were thrilled that Lori Kim and Karen Shillstrom, that Judy made the introduction to them and that we were able to interview them in the film.
Yeah, I was very intrigued that Yale has this big box of letters. What was that like? And, again, any of you can jump in. what was that like going through? I mean, it must have been, I don't know, it's like a living history of womanhood in America through the 80s. You know, it could be someone's PhD thesis right there in that box. So what was that experience like?
I was about to say that exact same phrase. It's just such an incredible living history of kids at that period of time. And it's boxes upon boxes upon boxes upon boxes. I mean, it's just endless. And Judy jokes about it. She says she never keeps anything. And there's someone writing a biography about her right now, and he's frustrated because there are some really interesting materials that she no longer has. But the letters she, for some reason, always held on to. And so, I mean, we didn't get to spend as much time physically at the archives because Yale had closed it for so long during COVID, but we did have a chance to be there a couple of times. And it's just, I mean, to hold like an actual letter, there's just something about pen on paper that's so poignant and powerful. And so throughout the process, we were getting scans from Yale, and it's such a sort of palpable representation of this really deep connection that Judy had with her readers and that they had with her. And so we just kept going back to them as sort of the heart of the film in so many ways.
And you were talking about how, the film's inception was in the thick of the pandemic. So did that, and I'd like the three of you to comment on this actually, did that affect the filmmaking style that I think that this is a two-part question. One, did it affect the way you wanted to make the film? And number two, do you think you would have made it differently if you were not dealing with a global pandemic?
Well, I guess I can start if you don't mind, Sara and Davina, and then jump in as much as you want. We would have loved to spend more time shooting verite footage with Judy and her life in Key West, and getting those sort of interactions that she has with the fans that come into the bookstore without masks on, because there is something so powerful about witnessing that moment. A fan meets Judy for the first time. I mean, most of them cry. It's why she keeps a box of tissues at that checkout station in the bookstore. So that really, I mean, obviously we couldn't spend a lot of time shooting anything verite because most of the verite footage you see is outside, is her walking outside, spending some time with George outside, because that's where we could do it safely. Because we were very COVID cautious. We wanted to make sure that we were keeping everyone safe, but most importantly, keeping Judy safe and keeping George safe.
Yeah, and I think as Leah said earlier, we, February 2020, I think we've officially really kind of got a green light to start. But of course, Davina had been talking to Judy so much longer. We came in as Imagine even before that. So I think there was such an anticipation to really start filming with her that, time is precious and we need to do this. And then we had to keep sort of pushing that first shoot down in Key West. So I think there was just a lot of anxiety about being able to really capture what we want to capture, as so many filmmakers, I think, experienced during the pandemic, like just the challenges of logistics and being able to really capture what you feel like you need. But I don't know about you guys. I mean, Davina, at the end of the day, I feel like we probably do have the absolute best version of this film.
I do. And like I said before, I think in some ways that extra time we had at the beginning really added a lot to the film and to our relationship with Judy and to the kinds of conversations we were able to have with her.
Yeah, and then as a member of the audience, I can absolutely attest to the fact that you do have the best version of your film. So congratulations again. I wanted to talk a little bit about the use of animation, which obviously leads to this larger idea of, the stuff that everyone talks about in the film. It's such a happy, joyful film, but you're talking about very heavy stuff. And so, I'd like to talk about, and Davina, you said you had children. Leah, you said you had children. So, what was going on at the back of your mind when it came to depicting heavy stuff like this, number one. And then again, like both people on screen, people are talking about their childhood traumas, and people off screen, and how does the use of animation play into that?
I think we always knew that I mean, the way that Judy faces everything head on, that the film had to include everything. And Judy's life and the lives of her readers had hard, dark moments. So the film, it's definitely a balance between sort of this joyful, funny, awkward teenage adolescent tone and the more serious part of coming of age, the more serious part of growing up. So I think a big part of the edit was figuring out how to strike that balance tonally. And then in terms of animation, I mean, I think feel free to jump in, anyone, but I think from the very beginning, one of the first conversations we were having was, what do we do about the excerpts? How do you do justice to these passages that, as Sara said, I mean, you hear them, or as you said, you hear them and you're immediately taken back and you have such strong associations with them. And everyone has their own image in their mind of, what Margaret looks like, what Deanie looks like. So we knew we didn't want them to be illustrations, like straight illustrations of what you're hearing. We knew we wanted them to capture the feeling of the writing in some way. And we watched Love Fraud by Rachel Grady and Heidi Ewing and saw this incredible animation, this collage style animation that reminded us a little bit of a style we were going for in a pitch deck we had created that was very tactile, collage style, colorful, but really, really emotionally resonant. And we thought, we've got to talk to these guys. So it's in two men in the UK, Martin O'Neill and Andrew Griffin. We reached out to them and said, would you be interested in talking to us about this? And I don't think they were familiar with Judy's work at that point, but they were totally game to talk. They both have daughters, and they were interested from the get-go. And that was a really fun collaboration.
And again, maybe I'm simplifying things here, but you are an all-women team. Did that make things, and I'm not going into, the thing, did you fight on the sets? But no, but like, did that collaboration help this particular film?
I mean, I think
I see everyone nodding their heads very violently.
It's something that Davina said when we introduced the film at Sundance. When you make any film, you get close to your collaborators. It's such a collective collaborative experience. And I think because Judy's books and all the conversations we were having with Judy and everyone we were talking to, all those conversations were so intimate. People were telling us when they got their periods, how they got their periods. They were telling us about how shameful they felt about masturbating. So we were having all those conversations as a team. I mean, those kind of intimate, honest conversations bond you as a team. We were bonding to each other. We were bonding to the people we were interviewing. It just felt like a really open, honest, I mean, of course, it was in this film about Judy Blume. We were all being open, honest, and intimate with each other. And I think we helped Martin and Griff in the UK feel a little more comfortable with what their daughters might be going through or might go through in a few years. At first, they were a little British about it and a little male about it. But we got them to spin some tampons on the screen. I mean,
I was literally like, are those tampons or are they flowers for a minute?
they're both, they're tampon
They're
flowers.
both, yeah.
Good.
I just came across an image I was reading about what's going on in Florida with the Don't Say Period bill, and there was an image of DeSantis like set against basically that animation of like just tampons and pads. So
yeah, and this was also, again, like, when I watched the film, of course there's the question of book banning, but there's also this entire question of policing the female body, policing the non-binary queer body, which again, like, it's so timeless the way Judy talks about it. So was that something you guys were looking into specifically as a theme?
yeah, I mean, when Judy started writing, abortion was illegal. And then when we premiered the film at Sundance, it was the week that would have been the 50th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. It's chilling to think about the regression that's happening. And we're definitely thinking about how all this relates to exactly what you said, the policing of queer and transgender bodies. But definitely, I mean, the forces that were censoring Judy in the 80s are not, they're the same forces that are, trying to prevent transgender teens from having access to the healthcare they need, that are banning books by transgender and queer authors. So that was definitely on our minds and part of the conversations we were having throughout. And we were really grateful that Alex Gino was able to talk to us, because they offer a really important perspective and voice in the conversation.
I think especially when they say that, and of course, books that were written in the 80s will not, like, some portions of them will not stand up to the test of time. And I'm so glad when you bring that up, that Blubber made me a little uncomfortable with the way it talked about body image issues or the non-binariness of the characters. So I really appreciated you guys bringing that in as well. I could go on and on, but I'm told I have 5 minutes. So I will use this 5 minutes to have each of you, I know this is putting you in a spot, but that's kind of my job, but I want you to name your favorite Judy Blume novel.
I feel like you are doing to us what we did to all. We're just, it's karma coming back to us. What we did to everyone we interviewed. So give it to us, because we deserve it. We put so many people in the spotlight. I'll start, since I already started blabbing. My favorite Judy Blume book is Tiger Eyes. I mean, I think probably because I don't have that childhood connection to her work. I was reading all the books as an adult, and Tiger Eyes is so beautiful. It's such a beautiful portrait of grief and longing and loss and love, and the writing is extraordinary. So that's my favorite Judy Blume book right now.
Sara, do you want to go next?
Yes, it's so hard for me to pick a favorite, because even as Leah was describing Tiger Eyes, I mean, I can again vividly recall when I first read Tiger Eyes and how I felt. And I was definitely a little older than I was when I read Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret. But Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret, I can recite in my head still many of those lines, and really identified strongly with Margaret, I think, growing up. So I don't know. It's so hard for me to pick just one, but I think Tiger Eyes, Margaret, and Deanie probably are the ones that had the most impact on me.
Davina.
Yeah, it's very hard to pick one. I mean, I think Margaret was definitely very formative for me, because I was the opposite of Margaret. I was an early bloomer who got my period the summer after 4th grade when I was 10, which was mortifying. It was before my older sister even got hers. So it was just
You should
mortifying
write
for
a book
everybody.
about it someday, Davina. That's a book.
Yes. So, there's a lot of comfort in opening up a book and discovering, oh wait, like someone wants this horrible thing that's happened to me is something that all these girls want. And there's a character in the book who maybe is a little bit like me and experiencing a little bit of what I'm experiencing. So that was a huge comfort. But I mean, yeah, so many favorites, but that's probably the most formative one for me.
Thank you so much for sharing Judy Blume with us, because if I had a few months with her, I would not share her with anyone. So thank you for sharing the film, making this film, sharing her and your art with us. And for everyone watching, thank you for joining us. And luckily for us, every time we need a little bit of inspiration, this film is streaming on Amazon Prime. It's also in theaters, so please go watch it. And let's keep the legacy of this fantastic, amazing woman alive. Thank you for joining us, all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.